What we discovered is that members of the grooming gangs were key figures in the communities whilst he was abusing the girls.
Wow.
He liked the girls to call him daddy. Sources from within the Labour Party contacted me. This guy was one of ours. The Islamists have infiltrated the Labour Party. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They conspired with each other to keep news of grooming gangs hidden, operating in the town. This man was the leader of the council. He's now a Secretary of State. We know, the police know, we don't care. I was horrified. So they used public funds to fund the mosque.
Wow.
The mosque has an arrangement with the council. The mosque was run by members of the Labour Party, and there was a cosy arrangement through which the mosque then supplied postal votes. And what I'm sharing with you is...
Would the people at the top of the Labour Party be aware of this?
Yeah, of course, 100%.
Starmer would know this is going on.
100%. It got even more sinister. Please tell us our children are safe.
Just quickly, last month I started actually asking you to subscribe because such a small percentage of you do. I didn't know if that would work, but the results are in. Last month, Heretics grew by 50,000 subscribers to pass 300,000. Who knew that all I had to do was ask? Thank you so much, and please keep liking and subscribing because we can grow this channel together and attract even more guests. We've wanted to get you on here for a while because of the work you've done looking into grooming gangs and some of the extremism within Islamism in the UK. In recent days and weeks in particular, you've been saying there's a lot of sort of beans to be spilled. What can you tell me about that?
Well, we've been at this for 6 years. Completely accidental. I think that's important to say. I did not go looking for this. I had a 20-year career in counter-extremism, safeguarding communities, sat on government task forces, contracts with the Office of Security and Counter-Terrorism, worked with convicted terrorists, all of that sort of stuff. Locally up in Manchester, I developed what was the counter-terrorism strategy before they ruined it. And then the arena bombing happened because we were too busy trying to get involved in other countries and sending young Libyan lads overseas and aiding them to go overseas and wondering why they came back nutcases. So I had enough. In all of that, I'd had enough. I had a newly born baby from a relationship that had fallen apart, and I had a mother who'd been recently diagnosed with cancer, and I wanted to go back and nurse my mother, and she lasted for 5 years. She lasted till November last year, and I wanted to make sure my daughter grew up knowing who her father was, and I was part of her life and she was part of mine. So I went back to a small northern town, having spent 20 years working pretty much, everywhere. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing in terms of, I'm a product of multiculturalism. In terms of my training, I've been trained by the left and having those sort of liberal sort of beliefs, and it's backfired on us. And I look back, and I was looking at this, an increasing level of sectarianism, an extreme level of people who look like me with a similar sort of backgrounds being adversarial at best, hatred at worst towards what should be their own nation. And it wasn't healthy, and it has never been healthy. So I used to write, and I write for my friends mainly, in that these days. So I started writing and sharing my views and opinions. And just out of sheer coincidence, a friend's wife of mine got in touch with me regarding the local mosque. And the guy in charge, the chairman of the local mosque, she told me he was a convicted sex offender. And she was concerned about her children. And in the communities I come from, women don't really speak out about those sorts of things. And might speak out against whoever's in charge of the mosque. And could I look at it? I didn't believe her. And I'll be honest with you, I started thinking, no, there's all these government legislation, DBS checks, safeguarding protocols. No. I got in touch with what is every local authority has one, a local authority designated officer. They're called LADOs, and we brought them in after, was it Victoria Climbié, and everything went wrong, and this child was horrific, failing after failing, and the country was meant to have changed. We brought in legislation, enhanced DBS checks, anyone who goes anywhere near children, all of that. I didn't believe it. Got in touch with the local LADO at the council, and it all went funny. And in the end, I got hold of an email that come back to the mother, I think, rather than to me. We know, the police know, we don't care. or words to that effect. I was horrified. I was genuinely horrified. Thought, this isn't how it's meant to operate. Went and asked some old friends, what's going on here? Because I grew up in that community. I was raised in that, it's a traditional Bangladeshi community. It was very different than when I was raised. It was much more mixed.
Would that be Muslim as well?
Yeah, Muslim, Bangladeshi Muslim. And I spoke to people, and like, no, Raja, you probably need to stay away from it. These guys are connected. And what transpired was the chairman himself carried a block vote. He was from a part of Bangladesh that controlled a significant amount of votes, and that's why he'd been put in position as the chairman of the mosque. The mosque itself, the entire management committee was Labour. There were Labour Party members, there were Labour Party councillors on there. I went digging around. It then transpired, forced out of the council. They lied first on the freedom of information, and we already had the information from somewhere else, caught them out, sent them back. Oh, yeah, we made a mistake. The lie was that they'd secretly funded the mosque. So they used public funds to fund the mosque.
Wow.
Yeah, 100% fund, in terms of they loaned the mosque the money on an interest-free basis over 18 years, apparently. And the repayment only came in after we raised it. As a table, hold on, this is wrong. Public
so that's
funds.
Taxpayers.
Yeah, all of that. And you'll see the freedom of information request. Everything I share with you is documented in the public sphere somewhere or another. So it's not like I can't quantify a single word I say. Everything I share with you is documented on this journey over 6 years. I campaigned on social media, created enough community outrage, and he was forced to resign. Before he was forced to resign, of course, a group of his associates attempted to assault me at a wedding. It was interesting. I grew up in that area, and I also had friends there, and enough people intervened, and that attempt failed. So at that point, I'm thinking, no, this is far more serious. What else is going on? It transpired that this chairman was formerly a Labour Party candidate in the local elections, and pictured with the MP for my town, a man called Jim McMahon, who we'll get to later. He's now Secretary of State. And when the 2017 general election took place, there's a front page article, I think it was in the Telegraph, where there's an article with Nigel Farage. I think UKIP were the main sort of opposition in Oldham, and they got completely blown out of the water. Michael Meacher had died. Jim McMahon stood as a Labour candidate. And the front page said, surge in postal votes from one mosque. That was the mosque. So essentially what had been happening was the mosque has an arrangement with the Labour Party controlled council. The council had secretly funded the mosque. The mosque was run by members of the Labour Party. The MP would come and visit the mosque, and there was a cosy arrangement through which the mosque then supplied postal votes. And what I'm sharing with you is something that I've now discovered takes place across the country in an identical way. Maybe not the funding bit, but the way in the relationship between mosques, the Labour Party, and the supply of postal votes.
Would the people at the top of the Labour Party be aware of this?
Yeah, of course, 100%.
Starmer would know this is going on
100%.
and welcome it perhaps because it's more votes.
And if you listened to what came out at Parliament this week, Angela Rayner stood up and talked about the desire to change legislation around voting. We'd campaigned, many of us for over a decade had campaigned for voter ID to be introduced as one step on a series of steps. Ultimately, we want postal votes getting rid of, and going back to how it was before Tony Blair said anyone can have a postal vote. We want to
just explain a postal vote. Then you don't have to provide ID.
They've changed it. They've changed it. Now you have to provide ID to register, and you fill in a form and you put a sample signature. But it's so easily circumnavigated. And what happens is essentially people, I call them members of the cartels, go around and collect postal votes from people. And if they don't hand over the postal votes, there's an issue. If you're not registered to vote, because the way our electoral system works, the candidates get a register, a marked register. That marked register will show everyone who's on the electoral register and everyone who's registered to vote and everyone who's registered to vote via postal votes. So what these guys would do is get a highlighter out, and everyone who isn't registered to vote with a postal vote, they'd go with the registration forms, knock on the doors and say, you're not registered to vote, are you? How about we help you register to be a postal voter? And when the man knocking on your door, for instance, is a convicted heroin dealer or one of the gangsters, and these people openly campaign in my town, openly campaign for the Labour Party, stand next to the Labour Party leader in the elections, celebrate, with their arms like this after the election once they've got these people in. It's very clear what's going on. The gangsters have infiltrated the Labour Party, or it's a partnership. The Islamists have infiltrated the Labour Party, or it's a partnership. And sooner or later, the Labour Party will rue and what's took place, and our nation will. I'm not sure. Yeah.
This is the Islamification
Yeah.
of what happened in Lebanon, what happened in Iran, Turkey is happening a little bit. Is that happening here? Then?
Yeah, 100%. And you will have seen that. Every one of you will have seen that this most recent general election when the Gaza issue exploded and you saw the Muslim community across the board break rank with the Labour Party. And what were they pushing for? They were pushing for a more Islamic position on a whole host of things. Now, the Labour Party have been in bed with these people, and now these people are thinking, okay, have the Labour Party, do we really need them anymore? And can we, and that is taking place across the country. And like Jess Phillips, for instance, I'm no fan of hers, but I remember when she won the election and the confrontation she had at the time, and what those men were shouting and stuff.
Yeah.
She knew what she was doing because she'd been in bed with these people, relying on these people for the votes for so long, and now they've turned on her. And it's happened across the country. She
must have seen that coming. The cognitive dissonance that must be in Jess Phillips's mind. I feel sorry for her because I think, like most people, she means well.
I don't think for 1 minute she realised what she was signing, or the ramifications of what she was signing. The way it works in government is there's a whole host of teams put things in front of you, explain to you what's gone on and give you a viewpoint of what is the official narrative, and she signed it, and now she's had to backtrack and it all unravels because we've kept all the receipts up to this point. The letter that went to Phillips was a consequence of 6 years of lawful campaigning by a small team, of working class people in my hometown, and it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected. The way in which our electoral system is being exploited, the increasing sectarian division, and an increasing number of young people growing up with Muslim backgrounds being completely alienated from the society in which they live in and see it as see us as an enemy to what they want. And then the grooming gangs and the way in which they exert power over people that they think are less than them. And that, unfortunately, sadly, horrifically, is white working class girls. And in the town I come from, and the towns where I come from, the people who let down these girls, most of all, if you want to racialize this or class, like, it was middle class white people and politicians who were white who believed or decided that it was a price worth paying for power.
Would you call yourself a Muslim today?
I am a Muslim. I think I always share this because there are so many people from my background, particularly from my generation, who are horrified by what's taking place. But our voices are fewer and fewer, and we're not aggressive people. We know we've gone on and had careers, have children. We've got so much to risk, and if we speak out, like I've spoken out, what happens is not only do the Islamists come for you, the state are active partners in supporting them coming for you.
I try to be objective.
And you're not. I can break your heart.
This is the Crazy Baby Lady. I've started a new channel, Andrew Gold Investigates. The first video's about an abusive exorcist.
Tranquilo, usted puede ser mi hijo, tranquilo.
Okay.
Tranquilo, que usted puede ser mi hijo. No me abra los ojos grandes, ¿eh? Sí, padre.
Sí, padre.
Soy un sacerdote, un obispo. Ustedes son una vergüenza. Goodbye.
The UK's most triggered campus.
We're going around in circles just because you.
Yeah, we're going around in circles because narcissists don't have enough empathy to ever listen to people like me.
She's hardly spoken.
Fine, speak more then.
Would you like to speak more?
The only country that won't report paedophiles to police.
Serbien kan kein Erlaubnis geben.
Doch. Nee, was ich meine ist,
and my time with the crazy baby lady pro-life extremist. Go watch them now. The link is in the description and pinned comment. And comment to tell me you came from this, because I need to know if anyone is actually listening. My God. And what is it that you're discovering, especially of late, in terms of the complicit nature of Labour and politicians with the grooming gangs?
The grooming gangs, it's now a matter of fact, isn't it? It was discussed in Parliament. The Home Secretary stood up the day before, evening before the vote, and made reference to specifically, she used the term Pakistani heritage grooming gangs. It's the first time that, a Labour Party Home Secretary has been forced to admit they exist. So first and foremost, they exist. They are real. This isn't a far-right conspiracy. They exist. They are real. And this country has a duty to respond to basically an organised cartel across the entire country, because they're all connected, because of the way in which our communities operate. The extended Mirpuri community, extended Pakistani community, they're interlinked. So it doesn't matter which town or city you go in. There's a family connection that you can pick up on. So they're linked. They exist across the country. I think Kemi Badenoch was very clear. Systematic abuse of children, gang rape of children across the country. So they don't just exist in one town, they exist across the country. Jess Phillips is forced to admit it and tries to distance herself from Aldermore, saying, well, they exist everywhere. I mean, oh great, that doesn't make any better, because they exist everywhere. And what's took place, what we discovered, is that members of the grooming gangs were key figures in the communities that delivered the block vote. So these guys controlled votes there, and I use Daddy as the example, Shabir Ahmed, because he's the most infamous of the grooming gang members. He was the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang.
Daddy, did you say?
Daddy. That's what he liked to be called whilst he was abusing the girls.
Wow.
He liked the girls to call him Daddy.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was an establishment figure in Oldham. We exposed, and the only reason we exposed this, so your people need to know, people need to understand, the only reason we exposed this was that sources from within the Labour Party contacted me to tell me, Raja, you need to know that this guy was one of ours. He was a prominent member of the Pakistani community in Oldham, an active member of the Labour Party, in and out of Michael Meacher's office at the time. Michael Meacher was the local MP. And to this day, prominent Muslim councillors who sit in that council had relationships with Daddy, and every one of them keep it secret. Not one of them will say anything. And this is how bad it is. And the way it played out is completely accidental. We got rid of the chairman of the mosque. A very open campaign. Of course, I was demonised by members of the community who benefited from that cosy arrangement. I understand that. That's completely understandable. I've come and messed up your nice little arrangement where you were getting all the grants, you were getting all the money, you were getting all the backhanders from the council, and that goes on in every council, I would imagine, up and down the country. I'm not saying it's right, but it's low level, whatever. It makes no, it's not damaging the country. It's not in terms of how this issue of the grooming gangs is. And a man got in touch with me, and I always share his name because he passed. He passed in just before May last year. I think it was April or May last year. A man called Warren Bates, former councillor. When he was 12 years old, 13 years old, he was a minor. So he was a working class bloke. He was in his 80s. And he would send me messages on Facebook. And I never understood any of it because his literacy wasn't the best, and he wouldn't use full stops or commas. And after a while, you can read what he's writing, but you've got to tune in. And I didn't know. I thought, who's this madman? And he was a former UKIP councillor. So he went on his journey. He would always talk about he was a member of 5 parties, never the Conservatives, but he was a member of every other party. But he got elected as a UKIP councillor, did a term, and he was incessantly getting more and more agitated, I think, that I wasn't responding to his stuff on Facebook. And for me at the time, I'd cleaned up the mosque in the community I'd come from. I'm okay. I can go back to raising my daughter and looking after my mother and getting on with my life. And a friend of mine, a former Lib Dem councillor, senior civil servant called Mohibuddin, he was he phoned me. I said, Roger, will you please speak with Warren? He's now mithering me. He's all right. Go and see him. He's all right. So I phoned him up and I arranged. He was insistent I saw him. And I remember this day because my life changed this day. I dropped my daughter off in school. It was the first day she started school in reception. And then as soon as I dropped her off, and there's a crying little baby, and you're leaving at the school gate, with the teachers. And then I get in the car. I drive 30, 40 minutes to a place called Failsworth. Failsworth is Angela Rayner, the now Deputy Prime Minister's backyard. And I drive to Failsworth, and I'm met by this man, Warren Bates, and his wife, Joan, who's lovely, still alive. And Warren, eccentric, all over the place. And I'm trying to make sense of him. And he offers me, I said, do you want a drink? I said, yeah, like a coffee. Well, I've got water and I've got beer. Oh, how about a coffee? Because comes back with a glass of water. I'm like, okay, fine. This is started really well. He goes upstairs, small house, goes upstairs. You can hear ex-council house. You can hear him rummaging around, comes downstairs. And it's an Aldi bag. He's got an Aldi bag with him, packed with papers, pulls the papers out, starts talking. And I'm reading. I'm trying to read and listen to what he's saying at the same time. And essentially, it's what I refer to as a dossier. And it's a dossier of emails that clearly shows that in Oldham, around 2013, 2014, there was a grooming gang, or a number of grooming gangs, operating out of shisha bars. So, these places where you go and smoke and stuff.
Right, yeah.
And the BBC journalist, a man called Kevin Fitzpatrick. Now, the reference to Kevin Fitzpatrick is, as well as being like the Northwest sort of key political correspondent, the Fitzpatrick are a powerful Labour family in Oldham and Thameside. So there's a direct Labour link. His father was a Labour councillor. I think some of his extended family members are big in the Labour Party. So Kevin Fitzpatrick and Jim McMahon, because it's addressed to Jim McMahon, and there's some other senior members of the council copied in the email. And what that essentially was an agreement between both of them to cover up that a grooming gang was operating in Oldham because it would cause issues in community relations. And they used the funeral of Lee Rigby, the soldier that these jihadists had beheaded, as an excuse, because Lee Rigby was from a neighbouring town near Rochdale. So they used that as an excuse, and you can see it's in black and white. There's no ambiguity in that. They conspired with each other to keep news of grooming gangs hidden, operating in the town. This man was the leader of the council. He's now a Secretary of State. No ambiguity whatsoever. The Labour Party in the recent elections, I ran in the elections as an independent. I ran as an independent for a number of reasons, but one was to raise awareness of this issue. We crowdfunded our campaign. We put through every house in the constituency, leaflet after leaflet of what had gone on and why we'd been campaigning. The Labour Party wrote to me threatening to sue me.
Huh.
I responded to them with, I'll see you at the High Court, bring it on. Nothing.
Because you've got the
Absolutely.
dossiers.
Absolutely. I did a career where I worked at a high enough level in government. I had contracts with the Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism. People can do a job. I can do my job. And this stuff I can evidence. So Warren shows me this, and then there's a series of additional emails involving a man called Hughie MacDonald. Now, Hughie MacDonald was the children's lead, the sort of safeguarding lead in Oldham Council. He was an elected councillor, a veteran Labour Party councillor, probably in his 70s or 80s at that time, and he whistleblew. What he did was he released that information via an email, I think, to the local connection service. Now, the local connection service works with 13 to 19-year-olds, at-risk young people, so he felt, I don't care what's gone on here, I need to say something or do something. And make sure that the information gets out to those who work with these children and young people so they can take the safeguards they need to take. Hughie MacDonald was then suspended by the Labour Party, went through a disciplinary process, was basically eventually sacked by the Labour Party, including Jim McMahon, who suspended him, and they brought in a man called Tony Lloyd. Tony Lloyd at the time was the Police and Crime Commissioner for Manchester. Tony Lloyd went on to become the MP for Rochdale, and very recently Simon Danczak, the former MP for Rochdale, has issued a statement to say Tony Lloyd told him to keep quiet about grooming gangs because it would hurt their votes.
Wow.
So this isn't, it's, how when things unravel, they unravel. So
Yeah.
I spoke to him and I said, well, why don't you phone Huey up and I'll go and see him? And this is one of those moments where I think, okay, there's another, whether there's a higher power or something going on, or there's a series of coincidences. And you'll see as we go through our discussion, there's a series of coincidence or fortunate events that led us to where we are, or unfortunate for me, depending on how you take it. Huey MacDonald, I knew from a past life. When I was younger, I worked in a white working class estate in Oldham called Halt's Village. I ran a project for the Church of England's Children's Society. So Huey MacDonald was a local councillor, and he'd pop in and hand awards out to kids and stuff. So I half an hour later, I'm sat in Huey MacDonald's house, and his wife did give me a cup of coffee. So I'm okay there.
Yeah.
And Huey then
Trying to think, I did offer you some coffee.
No, you
here,
offered me coffee. I wanted water, but
Okay, all good.
it's a morning thing, I think, for me.
Yeah.
And Huey MacDonald gets another carrier bag out with more information. And these are men of a generation before the internet, before that, and to quantify who Huey MacDonald is, because he's still alive, he was the chief magistrate in the town as well. So he isn't just a former councillor in charge of safeguarding. This is a man who for 15 or 20 years was the chief magistrate in the town. So you've got a slightly eccentric councillor in Warren Bates, but heart's completely in the right place. But then you've got a very legitimate person in Huey MacDonald who's saying, Raja, I need your help. We've been to the newspapers. They won't touch it. We've been to the Manchester Evening News. What was the Oldham Chronicle at the time? They won't touch it. No one will touch it. This is a wrong. It's still going on today. Please help us. And I remember sat there and thinking, I can get up and leave, or I can. And part of me wanted to get up and leave. I'll be honest with you. And there's not a day goes by in my life where I think, should I have got up and said, sorry, I can't help you. And I couldn't bring myself to do that. There was something inside me. I couldn't bring myself to get up and leave. And I went away and started asking questions, contacted my sources in the Labour Party, all of that. And I wrote. I put in the end, I put together a dossier of, like an article, had a Medium account, shared it on Medium. The article blew up and the Medium took the article down.
Yeah.
Never to this day, they haven't got back in touch with me. Why? But the leader of the council at the time was a man called Sean Fielding. He emailed and mocked me and laughed at me. Like, look how powerful we are. Yeah.
Wow.
Even though they took it down, I then just started posting on Facebook, like snippets of, look, this. I don't know how many Facebook bans I got over the period of time, but they used that to try and attempt to discredit me. But there was a council meeting coming up, and a number of elderly pensioners got in touch with me. I think Facebook has a slightly older demographic as I'm learning all of this, because my social media use was to wish my goddaughters happy birthday and stuff. That was my extent of my social media use 6 years ago. And I supported this group of women, elderly women, pensioners from the area, to navigate how to ask a question in a council meeting. You've got to fill in this form. You've got to submit it here. You can't say anything to, send it me, let me have a look at it. I'll tidy it up for you, send it back. You've got to be able to confidently, because at that time you could go to the council meeting, if your question was accepted, stand in front of the full council and read your question out and have a response from whichever one of the councillors needed to respond to you. A group of pensioners went to a council meeting, elderly white women, waited their turn. When their turn came, the council said, oh no, we've run out of time. Northern working class women are interesting, especially the older ones. They don't take no for an answer. So if they think they have a right to be somewhere, they have a right to be somewhere. And I smiled in admiration as I watched these women refuse to leave and then get out their phones recording the exchanges. The council meeting was stopped. The leader of the council, Sean Fielding, marched out every councillor out of the council chamber rather than answer an old woman's question about, please tell us the stories that Raja Mir is releasing is not true. and our children are safe. Please tell us our children are safe.
God.
Police were called.
Right.
Police threatened the old women. They filmed all of it. All of this again is online. Is a matter of public record. Sean Fielding, the following council meeting, I went, and I took with me a community of people, outraged. He stood up and he said, barefaced lies. The cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children were barefaced lies. I repeat, barefaced lies. He then, and this is where it gets sinister, he then started contacting people who were speaking out online, who were reputable. Like it had professional backgrounds. Like, hold on, we need answers on this. This email looks real. This looks real. That looks real. You're saying it's bad. We need answers on this. He used. This is the leader of Oldham Council. He won, I think, the leader of Oldham Council. He contacted the employers of people using official Oldham Council letterheaded paper to try and get them sacked. He contacted a man called Mark Wilkinson, who worked with children in sort of some probation sort of scheme, former police officer, tried to get Mark Wilkinson sacked. He contacted a woman called Jane Barker. Jane Barker at the time was on a sponsored PhD program at Manchester University, tried to get her sacked. He contacted my friend, who asked me to go and see Warren Bates. It contacted his employer, the civil service, to try and get him sacked. I think they contacted them 8 times to try and get them sacked. They launched a smear campaign on me, and they tried to shut this down. It wouldn't shut down because I wouldn't stop talking, and I wouldn't stop talking because people wouldn't stop releasing me information. So the next bit of information that came from the Labour Party, was Shabir Daddy Ahmed, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang, was a member not just employed by the council, he was also a senior member of the Labour Party, and when he was employed by the council, he had access to children. He worked in a role that gave him access to children, and I haven't been able to prove this element of it, but this is what I was told at the time, is that his business affairs were done from a little black book where he'd make appointments for people who'd come to see him to meet with children later.
Awful.
Shabir Ahmed, we forced, when the inquiry finally came, the police missed 9 opportunities. 9 opportunities where they should have arrested and charged him.
What
9 times.
They're just, is it a fear
He
of...
was politically connected. He was politically protected.
Is there a fear among the police of being politically incorrect? Is that?
And I think they're controlled. I think the more journey I've been on this, the more they are partners in this. This isn't at a grassroots level, at a frontline level, amongst a certain demographic of staff. I would agree with you. The fear of being branded racist. I'd agree with that. But that wasn't what this was about. This was about people were reporting these people, and the investigations would disappear. And this is a man this is not just a man who controlled votes and power. He was also a member of the establishment. He sat on the board of the local community Citizens Advice Bureau, the CAB. The CAB in Oldham, like in any towns like mine, the people who sit on the management committee are basically the figureheads of the town. It's a status position, like you sit on the round table or the CAB or something. You're part of the establishment. They protected Shabir Ahmed.
Is this what you would say to those? There are a lot of people saying, and I don't think they're entire. I mean, there's some point in what they're saying, which is, hey, look, there are these Islamic grooming gangs, but there are also white British grooming gangs that talk about Devon and Cornwall.
Yeah, they're different. No. I get that, and I see it as a deflection. And the people who attack me with it, I say, no, you're wrong. The motivations are different, and also the way in which they went about the business is different.
No, it's still terrible for the victims.
It's terrible for the victims, 100% terrible for the victims.
And probably isn't spoken about enough.
No.
And I think across the board, whether it's Islam or white British, sex offensive children, I mean, people go to prison for like a year or 2, don't they? It's not, you go longer for a finance crime.
As a society that cannot protect its children, what society is that? And I look at this through the prism of not just someone who worked in government believing that our way of life was of a, like we had it figured out. We know we're okay. But actually, we're not. We're worse than some of the places I come from. And then I look at this through the prism, and I think of also a father, and I think, how can we not protect our children? How can we allow the trading of our children, if not the selling, the trading of our children, because because our careers might suffer, or because we might not get the votes we want, or whatever the reason is. And this is it's just absolutely disgraceful. So Shabir Ahmed, we released, and Sean Fielding, we are campaigning for a public inquiry. 6 years ago, we started a public inquiry. He launched an internal inquiry first, and that collapsed because we called it out, because they were setting the terms of reference. They were deciding who could investigate, what they could investigate. And what Fielding did was he went to his friend, the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham. So this is the first time another of the most powerful politicians in this country gets involved. The first one that's incriminated in black and white is Jim McMahon. Black and white incriminated in the dossier of emails released, and his connections to some of these people in terms of the mosques and stuff. The next one is Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham announces what he calls an assurance review, that he bolts on to an existing review that is commissioned following the airing of the BBC's Betrayed Girls, which is about Shabir Ahmed and the grooming gangs and stuff. And Andy Burnham should have known better. Andy Burnham is a veteran of the Hillsborough campaign. He's seen how these things play out. He commissioned a review in Manchester first, and then bolted on in Oldham, and then also in Rochdale, because the grooming gangs didn't operate by council boundaries, did they? It's like a drug network. They go where the business is. They go where they can pick up the kids. They go, or they can sell the kids. And he commissioned a review that was completely toothless. Completely toothless. And the one in Manchester that came out first, just to give you an example, 97 men were identified as members of a grooming gang. The police identified 97 men. From what I can work out, predominantly Pakistani, Bangladeshi, linked to the the sort of taxi network, which is how the grooming gangs operated at the time. 97 men. The police and the council, police and Manchester City Council, shut down the operation.
Why? Because of orders from above.
The men, from what I've been told, were politically connected. Yeah, it goes back to the votes, the political connection. And the bit that should have caused outrage to the man who commissioned the review, Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, who's also the Police and Crime Commissioner, is in the report. It's published in black and white. No one can find the minutes. The minutes were lost. The minutes where that decision was taken to close down an inquiry to go after nearly 100 child sex offenders. The minutes of that meeting were lost. There are far more failings in that Manchester one. And Maggie Oliver stood up, I remember at the time, and she was outraged because Maggie Oliver had been campaigning from that point on, in that timestamp. The Oldham Bolton review, it was led by his two experts, Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway. How can you have an assurance review or an inquiry where the people who are being investigated decide what you can see, what you can't see, whether or not you can speak to anyone involved, and the victims or the witnesses that they want to bring forward, it's up to the ones who are being investigated to be the ones responsible for contacting the victims. And the consequence of that was they'd got to the end of the review process. Took them 3 years. We took out a couple more council leaders in the process. Took them 3 years. And what they did was they failed to speak to a single survivor. An investigation into child sexual exploitation in my hometown that we'd forced through relentless campaigning, and they failed to speak to a single survivor. And the only survivor they eventually spoke to was a consequence of the direct intervention of Maggie Oliver, who contacted them and said, what on earth is going on? We've got survivors here who want to speak to you, and you've not allowed, and they allowed one survivor. But at that time, the report was, it was just pandering to her, had a meeting with her. That young woman recorded the meeting, and that's in the public domain as well. And he's just, they're just pandering to her. And you can see they're just pandering to her. The terms of reference to that inquiry, the terms of reference of Andy Burnham's inquiry that we forced, included a window of just 3 years, 2011 to 2014. It set where they could go looking and where they couldn't. So, for instance, schools were excluded from the terms of reference. Yeah, you're looking at me. Yeah. So they're trying to manage this all this time, and the terms of reference made reference to something called Operation Hexagon. Now, this is an inquiry into allegations of child sexual exploitation, child rape, grooming gangs, Pakistani rape gangs linked to the Labour Party. That's everything I'd released. They're forced to launch an inquiry into the information I'd released and the campaign we'd led. And in the terms of reference, and again, public documents, you'll find reference to Operation Hexagon. Operation Hexagon, as the most senior police officer in Oldham told me when he met with me during this process earlier on, was a joint Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council operation to come after me and come after any member of the public that spoke out against the grooming gangs.
Oh my gosh.
This is what you do with football hooligans, those sort of organized, where they map and identify. That's what is, say you did that. And it's outrageous that you do that, first of all. But then secondly, you do that and you put it in the terms of reference of the investigation. Who's going to come forward and give evidence?
Yeah.
Who's going to come forward and give evidence? No one. They contacted me, asked me to give evidence. I'm the main whistleblower, main whatever. They called me accuser or something in the letter they sent me. And I responded, yeah, of course I will give evidence, providing my testimony is recorded. Is it an unreasonable request? I want to testify.
No.
If it's not going to be in public with people, in a public space, please get a tape recorder, record my testimony. My transcript is included in the report. We take selective notes.
Yeah, I bet
Yeah,
they do.
yeah. The inquiry had been set up in such a way where they take selective notes. Two of the other individuals involved, the adults involved, one was a man called Kaiser Raymond who got in trouble because he whistle blew. He got involved and he publicly, it's on X, you'll find his post on X to this day, he withdrew from the investigation because the notes that they presented to him was full of inaccuracies that did not reflect on his testimony. They got in touch with Huey MacDonald, and the last conversation I had with Huey MacDonald was, Raja, I keep sending them back. They keep sending me, I keep sending them back. What I've said isn't what's in the...
Oh my God.
Yeah, so you can see the scale of the cover-up. We decide where we go, we decide who we speak to, and when we speak to them, we decide what we write down as to what they've said, and then we put in front of them to sign off. And by the way, whatever the number of children that were groomed and gang raped, we'll finish our report without even speaking to a single one of them. This is Andy Burnham's report. This is the Greater Manchester Mayor. This is his assurance review. And when they produce their assurance review, they produce it and it comes, and they all stand up. And the leader, the council at the time, was a woman called Amanda Chattis. And you'll see on the videos, you can still find it on the GMCA webpage if people go looking to be archived somewhere, I'm sure, is they make reference to me and I lied. And apparently it wasn't a cover-up. And you'll see all the time they're saying, it wasn't a cover-up, it wasn't a cover-up, it wasn't a cover-up. That review did not even detail how many children were groomed and gang raped. They didn't even give us a number. They used case studies, I think, of 10 children. One, victim A, she contacted me. I'd never met the girl. She contacted me on social media, crying. They'd come to her house and given her a file to say, you're going to be included in the review. And had a whole host of things. She goes, it's full of inaccuracies and they've not even had the decency to talk to me. Will you please talk to me? I said, I can talk to you, but what good will I do? Well, I want to share my story. So I interviewed her. I put it out online. Horrific story. Absolutely horrific of what happened to this child. And they knew. The police knew. The council knew. They all knew. And Andy Burnham, as a consequence of his assurance review, looking all smart, talked about Operation Sherwood. The police have created Operation Sherwood. We're going to go after these grooming gangs. We're going to go after all of these. The public needs to be reassured. The first thing Operation Sherwood did was go and threaten this young woman for speaking out.
My God. What is wrong with these people? It beggars belief. And I suppose that's your point here is, you know, I asked before why it's different to what's happening with the white gangs. This is the difference is this is systemically backed and enacted by is our government doing it?
It's a cover up. It's a cover up. It's a cover up. It's a cover up.
But how do we fight against this? How do we stop this happening?
What we did is what led to Jess Phillips's letter, because we've been calling for a public inquiry. Mm-hmm. We're a politically active town. We took out Sean Fielding at the ballot box. He was replaced by a woman called Arood Shah. Arood Shah, gangster affiliated, openly gangster affiliated. We took her out at the ballot box. The consequence of taking her, before we took her out of the ballot box, it got even more sinister. She's linked to a man called Mohammed Imran Ali. Mohammed Imran Ali is better known as Irish Jimmy. He is the getaway driver of Dale Cregan, the cop killer.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yes. One of the young women who was killed was from Oldham. One of the police officers was from my town. This is the man who's the getaway driver of a cop killer, hangs off the arm of the leader of the council. She was a councillor. He'd come out of prison, came after me. Openly boasted online. His scouts were following me home.
Do you feel fear in these moments?
Yeah. The police got in touch to give him a due. Jim Faulkner, the DCI, who asked me to speak with him, he got in touch. Raja, these are dangerous people. We're going to have to intervene. We're monitoring what's going on because they've set up this Operation Hexagon to come after me, but now they're monitoring it and saying, actually, no, these are dangerous people.
Yeah, how does it feel to hear that from a copper?
Yeah. Went to my daughter's house, put security measures in the house. Went to my mother's house, terminally ill, put security measures in my mother's house, came to my house. And then Jim Faulkner left. Decent copper, left. Had enough. You could see he'd had enough and left because he was having political pressure put on him. I can tell that's what gone on. I can read a room. I can read people. I've sat in rooms with people with machetes and machine guns. You can tell what's going on just by looking at people. He left. Arood Shah's car got blown up. Firebombing of her car. Made international news. The leader of Oldham Council's car is blown up. I'd written an article around the time her car had been blown up. Jim McMahon, the MP, went to the Daily Mail and made a series of allegations, still published in the Daily Mail to this day, that I was responsible for inciting violence against her. The Daily Mail got in touch, and I said, yes, I have written an article. The article was about the growing fear of the Islamists moving into our country and using the Israeli conflict, the Palestinian conflict, to radicalize a new generation of of young people. And it's the world I came from. I could see it happening. And I wrote an article about it. I shared with the Daily Mail reporter, and I've still got the exchanges. I've got absolutely everything. I shared with the Daily Mail reporter. Yeah, I did write an article. I published the article after her car had been blown up. So how can I be responsible with this article if I published the article after the car had blown up? The only difference they made in the article was they removed my name. But to everyone in the town, it was obvious who it was.
That's and they're trying to a target on your back.
Yeah, they're trying to shut down debate. They were trying to shut me down in terms of campaigning because I was effective. I was being effective. I'm trained in this. I'm being effective. I'm getting people mobilized. I believe in democracy, and I believe that we bring about change, which is the question you asked, is at the ballot box. We elect the people we deserve. Because if we don't bring about change at the ballot box, where is the change going to come from? Where does it take us?
Should we have compulsory voting like they have in Australia? I was always against that because I like the idea of individual liberty. You don't want to vote, you don't vote. But if we're going to have sectarian, mosques pushing people to vote, is that the only way to combat that?
I think it's a valid argument. I genuinely think it's because of the apathy. But also, why is there apathy? Well,
because everyone just wants to keep their head down, and that's how every bad thing's happened over the years, isn't it?
Yeah. I agree. So
You could still have, you compulsory to.
and you
fill
can say,
out.
I don't want any of them.
Abstain.
I don't want any of them.
As long as you've got people who are too lazy
Yeah.
have to write something. I don't think.
I think at the local elections we have like a turnout of 30%, and
That's
less
the
in
thing,
some
yeah.
wards. Less, you can get elected as a council with like 600 votes in some wards, particularly the white working class wards where no one turns up. And with the Muslim bloc vote, it's mobilised in a different way, and it's more powerful than any other.
Yeah.
In
and they only need
a
a small percentage,
Yeah.
and they've won
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
most people don't vote.
Yeah, most people don't vote.
It's the most pathetic way
Yeah.
to lose a country.
Yeah, I agree. And we're losing our country. I think that's what I'm saying to you. We are losing our country. This isn't just about the systemic gang rape of children across the country. If that wasn't bad enough, if that wasn't bad enough, the underlying conditions that allowed that to take place is that we are losing the very democracy in our very nation. We're losing our country because of what's taking place and because of the active participation of powerful politicians in that relationship, and it's wrong.
And this is something that you, as a Muslim person, a son of immigrants, are you? Are you second?
I'm second generation. My history is very straightforward. The tradition in my family was that the eldest son was sent off to serve the motherland, as it was known then. The call came on the wireless. The Second World War had been declared, and my grandfather sent my father off to walk all the way to Calcutta, get on a boat and serve in the Second World War. He served in the Second World War. The boat docked in Liverpool. They kicked him off and told him to make his own way home.
Bloody hell.
And that's if I have a loyalty to my nation, that's where it comes from. That's how I ended up here.
And you are a second generation.
I'm second generation
Muslim
yeah,
immigrant who is fed up with what's going on here.
And the more you look at it, I think the third generation, the fourth generation, they have become more conservative, more Islamically influenced than.
You said before the older generations are like, what's going on with these kids?
Yeah. They're far more pragmatic. The
older.
The first generation who came felt a level of lucky to be here. There was and they'd put up with stuff. Fine.
Yeah.
A second generation people said, okay, we belong here, we need to contribute here, and we need to build our lives here and be part of society and add value to it. But you go along and you see it shifted. And,
So
and
is
that's
it
about world affairs. It's about this.
a nostalgia for something they never had, or some sort of dream idealism.
I don't think they quite understand what they are buying into. I think if they genuinely went into some of the places where these Islamic regimes operate, I think they'd come running back with a very different.
Well, like Shamima Begum.
Yeah. But as that young woman, they'd come. If she'd be the first one back, and if I think there's an argument for bringing her back, the argument for bringing her back is sending her out into every one of these places and say, listen, go and tell them the truth about what it's really like.
It reminds
What
me
living under the Sharia is really like. Go and tell them the truth.
I wonder. It feels a bit like the incel culture in the UK. This sort of young people, their disaffection, they can't afford house. They can't, unlikely to have these great lives. It is more difficult. It is difficult for kids these days, or young adults to break into the housing market. All those kinds of things. Disillusioned, and they're going, gosh, what's better? So the incel cult, they go off into their thing, and if you're in the Muslim thing, you go off into your thing.
Yeah.
And bloody hell,
We're in a mess. We're in a complete mess.
oh my gosh, do you feel any hope?
Yeah, well, I do because of what we did. I think in terms of hope, the police arrested me multiple times. 3 years I spent on bail. Malicious, fabricated allegations. Dawn raids on my house. 8 police officers raided my house. Last time they raided my house, it was to stop me from campaigning in an election. We took out 2 leaders. We took out Arud Shah. It was Amanda Chadderton. All the time we were trying to lobby for votes in the council chamber to call in the government for a public inquiry. We're getting stronger and stronger. We're replacing the councillors with people of our own. And Amanda Chadderton comes along. We're just about to take her out. We'd be the 3rd council leader in a row. The police arrest me again and say, basically tell my lawyer that they sent a fast track charging decision to the CPS to have me put on remand, so I can't go out campaigning.
Bloody hell. Yeah, you've been described as a dangerous man as
I
well.
am, yeah.
Who described you as that?
The first one was Debbie Abrahams, the MP. She doctored a whole host of correspondence between me and her online, went to the police, trying to have me prosecuted. I keep the receipts. My lawyer just brought out the actual real correspondence. And if you've chopped bits out all over the place and tried to make it look like something else, it doesn't work. So she called me a dangerous man. What, a dangerous man because I'm not stupid?
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
It's a crazy situation we've gotten ourselves into, I think. I've got another question for you, but first, where can people follow you and keep up to date with what's going on?
I'm on X, Reticent_Raja, I think is where you'll find me, and I write my stuff on a blog, redwallandtherabble.co.uk. They call us Rabble, as to smear us. So I thought, okay, we'll take the
Ownership
term,
of the word.
we'll own it, yeah. And the Red Wall was, the Labour strongholds in these areas, and I genuinely believe that the Red Wall in these towns and cities is now held up with the green mortar of Islam. The Islamist green mortar holds this Red Wall up.
I saw that, Mothin Ali was one I saw, with the Palestine flag.
Yeah.
That was a scary thing for a lot of people to see, because you had this one sort of white woman who was very much in the background. Did you see that video?
Yeah.
And she's sort of standing straight, and and these guys were just the Palestine flags, and he's screaming "Allahu Akbar." Which just seems so odd to me, because imagine sort of Jewish guy taking charge and screaming something in Hebrew. You'd be like, "What are you doing? This is England."
And the Palestinian cause, I am 100% certain there's a layer of anti-Semitism in that, because these people are politically drawn towards criticising Israel, which is fine if you want to criticise Israel, but then criticise all the other places where Muslims are killed as well. If you want to look at the world that way, there isn't that same thing. And then criticise and they say, "Oh, it's about humanity." Well, then why aren't you criticising the places where Muslims are killing others, or like the Yahtzee? All
Israel's
of that.
responsible, I think, for about 1% of Muslim deaths in wars, which it's still not. It's not nice what happens there, but that other 99%,
which shows that they're radicalised. For me, and this radicalisation is going, and the Labour Party, because it's not the Conservatives don't understand it, so they don't engage with it. The Lib Dems are too woolly to even think it exists. But they have entered a partnership with these people, and that partnership with these people is costing us, and it continues to cost us. Why do you think Keir Starmer, straight after Southport, started talking about the need to defend Muslims? Because he and the Labour Party need to make sure that the Muslim community in this country feel under threat from the wider white community, and that it's only the Labour Party that can protect them. And that way they ensure the loyalty from that community. Yeah.
I wonder if he tells himself that, or if he tells himself a different story of, "I'm the protector of the minorities." Do you think he's more cynical than that?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, absolutely. Because when you go into those communities, what you find, and this is when it's shifting now, what would historically happen is that the powerful positions would be held by the white councillors or the white MP, and they'd hand out little smaller roles to the Asians, the Pakistanis, or the Bangladeshis to say, "There you go, you can sit at the table, and as long as you deliver me the votes, I'm in charge, and you get a little bit." These people they don't want to feed off scraps anymore.
Bloody hell.
They want the big seats.
See, I find it hard, because I'm a bit naive sometimes, and I always think people mean well, and even the worst things, Hitler. There's no one you could find that I wouldn't say they meant well because they thought they were doing what was right. Mao, Stalin, Mussolini, all of them. I think maybe there are psychopaths, I suppose. And I go by Hanlon's razor, never attribute malice.
Okay.
Is that what it is? Never, I've got it here. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. And stupidity is not really the right word, but in this case,
naivety,
it could be.
maybe.
Yeah, naivety. I think that would work. But I think you're saying no.
No, this is calculated.
He wants votes.
Yeah, this is absolutely calculated. The arrangement is absolutely calculated. It's 100% calculated. They know what they're doing. They know they're turning a blind eye to a whole host of things, and by turning a blind eye, they're ensuring the loyalty. And now the loyalty has come under threat because there's been a split because of the Palestine thing, and some of these people now think we don't need you anymore. We can vote for ourselves, and we can speak for ourselves. What he is now trying to do is no, look, if it's not for us, these people are going to come after you. If it's not for us, these people are going to come out for it. And that's why, is it Wed Streeting, I think, is that how you pronounce his surname? Streeting, yeah. Announced, I think, yesterday, something about how the grooming gang thing was resulting attacks on Muslims and stuff. So these people are very calculated in what they're doing.
Like, we'll look after you, come with us, stay
and
with
us. if we're not here to look after you, what's going to happen to you?
You see, and then when that did happen in Iran, when they got in, as a
Well, they
coalition,
lynched them, didn't they? He saw what happened with the cranes and stuff.
killed
Yeah.
all the lefties.
Yeah.
So that's your future kid. That's why I think it's naivety.
Yeah.
So, because he can't be wishing for his own demise.
I think they can control it. I think there's a colonial mindset in my communities, and there is still, particularly amongst the older ones, a colonial sort of submission where if a white politician comes along, there's the older ones will still bow down to him and want to take a picture with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's arrogance maybe on Starmer's part. A bit of like, Iran won't happen to us because we can control these.
And why won't it? Look at Oldham, look at Bradford, look at the demographics, look at the population projections. What? Oh, you're a racist, you're a far right activist. I've been called that all the time. Well, no,
Against what race? I don't even understand.
I want to protect my nation. There's no race element. I want to protect it so it's a home for all of us.
Yeah. Oh God, we'll all be gone. Who's a heretic you admire?
So the first time I came across a heretic, I was in junior school because I'd never heard the word before, and it would be the round world guys, and I couldn't believe that they were being persecuted. Was it Galileo or it was the first one, but the first time I ever used the word and applied it in my life, it'd probably be Salman Rushdie. Oh, if I'm honest, it was someone like and in this world and in this work we do, the Satanic Verses was a shift in the UK. It was the first of the Islamist sort of roots being planted in modern day United Kingdom, and the way he spoke out, and then the way he's been persecuted since. I'd say
stabbed in the eye.
Yeah,
bloody hell.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, we can talk. I think it's okay to talk about the problems in the community and things like that. But if you dared say something about Muhammad or anything like that.
And this is my outlook now as a Muslim. People say I'm not a Muslim at best. My critics describe me as a gay Christian convert to try and incite Islamists to come and kill me, which is fine. You can call me whatever you want. I'm not going to condemn or criticize gay people any more than I'm going to criticize someone who's black or someone who's Jewish. Our nation is our nation, and everyone belongs here. And I look at this and I think, since when did we? Why would you want to burn books? And if someone does burn a book, so what? If someone does criticize the Prophet, so what? Am I so weak in my faith and my beliefs that I have to incite your, chant for your death because you're criticizing my faith and my religion? And that's why I am very much fearful, apprehensive of this Islamophobia definition coming in and going to, this place where we're bringing in laws that you can't criticize religions or you can't, and I say that as a citizen of this country, I'm struggling. I'm genuinely struggling because I look at this and I know it goes elsewhere in the world. And are we that arrogant to think that there's something that will keep, safeguard us from going?
What's special about us? Why would it be different? My guest you bumped into before, Josh Howie, he was saying he sees it a little bit as Judaism's an old wise man because it's been thousands of years, and then Christianity sort of maybe a bit younger, so you can't really make fun of it so much. Whereas Islam is a new religion in many sense, and in that respect, it's like a teenager who's going to lash out if somebody, because they don't feel confident enough in their own or whatever it is, they can't be criticized, and that's scary.
Do we want to live in a society where you can't question?
Yeah.
Do you want to live in a society where if you say something, you're branded as a heretic? What? Why? And on our issue, what sort of society is it that doesn't take care of its children? And this week that's just gone, the Prime Minister led his Labour Party government to vote down. They knew to vote down a public inquiry into protecting children that have been groomed and gang raped across this entire country, and the stats will show, the research will show it's still happening.
That's a very depressing note to end on. But people, please go follow Raja Mir. I'll put his Stuff X and Substack, and Substack was it?
It's on Ghost. I use Ghost as a platform, but you'll find it. It's a blog. Yeah,
we'll put it there. You just send me after. We'll put it in the links. He's one of the top people on this, and it's a really, really important topic. So give him a follow over there. Hit this like button and keep watching this channel.